In the world of medicine, where every decision can change lives, your peace of mind is crucial. This is where Pattern steps in. Imagine insurance made simple, fast, and personalized, just for you. With Pattern, you're not just getting disability and life insurance, you're insuring your future and protecting your greatest asset, your income. In the past 10 years, Pattern has transformed the way over 20,000 doctors secure their financial well-being. Discover the simplicity of securing your future at patternlife.com or click the link in the description.
Have you been wondering if LinkedIn can benefit you? Tune in today's episode where our guest expert shares ways physicians can leverage and optimize their LinkedIn presence.
Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. Today I am your host, Dr. Amna Shabir, and I have with me a very special guest. Meredith Pasikoff-Dinitz is the founder of Your Career Happiness Professional Coaching, offering strategies to help professionals achieve their desired careers. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Public Health from Indiana University and an MBA and MHSA from Arizona State University. As a certified career transition coach with over 14 years of experience as a recruiter and coach, Meredith provides expertise in strength discovery, personal branding, resume, and LinkedIn optimization, interview preparation, networking strategies, and targeted job search techniques. So today we are going to be talking about all things LinkedIn. But before we dive into that, Meredith, if you can kindly share what attracted you to your current career with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So as you were kind enough to share, I was a recruiter for a little over 14 years, and I found myself feeling burnt out and stuck in a role that really no longer fit me, but the financial stability really made it hard to walk away. I realized that during this time, I had really already been coaching my candidates through the whole job search process. So I started working with a career coach to really help me identify my strengths and passions. And through this process, I realized that I, could really combine and utilize and leverage my extensive recruiting background in conjunction with helping people identify that next path that they love. And that ultimately led me to starting my own practice where I can help work on the areas that you just shared.
Wonderful. And, whenever we're talking about careers, we're talking about job searches, you can't complete the conversation without talking about LinkedIn. And initially, I'll say that I've had a lot of wonderful connections on LinkedIn and I have learned tons and grown, but I wasn't very particularly drawn to that platform initially. So here I am and we're having this conversation, going to dig deeper. I mean, why should doctors even care about LinkedIn?
And that's a great question. And what I'd like, there are several reasons. When LinkedIn was first created, it really was created to be a networking platform. And I know that has unfortunately, pivoted some and people use it for different means now. And I have a lot of clients that tell me they think it's more like the Facebook of business. But as you just shared, it really can be so important as a physician for their professional networking, being able to connect with other peers and mentors and professionals, in the medical field and really fostering that collaboration and knowledge sharing. So that's one reason. If you happen to be in the job market, I can tell you that 95% of recruiters use LinkedIn to identify candidates. And hospitals and companies, healthcare organizations, whatever space it may be, that's how they're out there looking as well. So really it can open the doors to different opportunities from that regard and build relationships that can help get you referrals. Also, if you're in private practice, that's another way that you can use it. LinkedIn can help you establish yourself as a thought leader, using LinkedIn to share insights, articles maybe that you've published, engaging in discussions, really establishing yourself as a thought leader in your specific area and differentiating what sets you apart. It's obviously a very competitive field and so many different specialties. So LinkedIn can really allow you to differentiate yourself and share, what it is that your message. When you think about patient trust, right? A professional online presence can really enhance that patient trust by showcasing your qualifications, your achievements, endorsements that you may receive from other colleagues or mentors. You can use LinkedIn as a physician to educate your patients on sharing reliable information about research findings, the future of healthcare, whatever your space is. Another great reason to be on LinkedIn, I know there's a ton of different resources for educations, but think about continuing education. LinkedIn providers, there are so many different groups on LinkedIn for, every different specialty. There are courses, there are events. And so this can allow physicians to stay updated again on the latest medical advancements and trends. And lastly, when you think about like reputation management, again, by actively managing and having that online presence, it builds your brand, it builds your visibility, allows you to be that thought leader. It can open up doors for different, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're, looking for a new job or what the case may be, research, consulting, whatnot. There are a ton of different avenues to use.
Wow. Yeah. I'm hearing all in one place where you can not just demonstrate your clinical skills, but you can also build your brand. You can build an authority. You can share information. So many ways that you can take that one network and to leverage it. For some of my clients that I coach, like I will have that conversation with them. Do you even have a LinkedIn especially when they're starting this job search situation? I'm like, if you don't, then we have to go and resuscitate that page and let's bring it back up and kind of go from there. As you're thinking of all of this, are there any common mistakes that you see? I mean, other than not being on the platform?
Yes, absolutely. So to your point, clearly not being on the platform, but an incomplete or an outdated profile is absolutely a mistake. And what I mean by that, not having an updated or professional headshot, having very basic headlines, and we'll spend a little bit of time going through what it should look like, leaving that summary section, that about section, either blank or again, very poorly written, not really showcasing and highlighting any of your work experience, your fellowships, your residencies, your certifications, neglecting all of that. Again, like you were sharing, it's about visibility. It's about building your brand. And by not having a complete profile, you're losing out on that. A second piece is not being consistent with your engagement. I know we are all busy, especially as a physician, but if you can dedicate 15 to 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week to engage in content, whether you are posting something, maybe you're sharing an article that you wrote, a speaking engagement, commenting on other colleagues, professionals, posts to share your insight to help with your thought leadership, liking posts, things like that. LinkedIn actually rewards those that tend to have more activity to build your visibility. So again, even if it's 15 to 20 minutes, it doesn't have to be hours, a couple of times a week, that really helps. The last thing I would say is that, again, as I mentioned before, I know, unfortunately, LinkedIn is sort of morphed into all these other things, but truly, it really is that networking platform. So I caution my clients, especially in the medical field, make sure that you're not sharing inappropriate content, meaning, something that's too personal, controversial, not really related to your space, right? You want to make sure that your posts are in that professional content, right? So again, it's building your thought leadership. It's building your brand. What can you share? What are you seeing? You want to really make sure that that content is geared toward the message and the audience that you're trying to target.
Interesting. Because the last part, it's especially since they added video recently, it's interesting to keep it strictly in the lanes because every now and then you'll hear some experts say, oh, it's okay, to share some personal stuff. And I feel like I have shared some personal stuff, but not, I would say, irrelevant. Like even the personal information that I shared, I feel was part of the larger message that I'm trying to communicate with my audience.
Yeah, and that's a great point because I do absolutely agree with you. Like, you want to think about LinkedIn as your marketing, as your brand, right? How do you want to show up? How do you want to be seen? And I absolutely agree that there should be some version of a personal element because you want your audience to get to know you to a point, but just be careful. There's that fine line. So I agree. You can kind of have some of that personal so that they can relate to you and know that you're human, but just be careful how much you're sharing and, to what it speaks to.
Point noted for today. All right, Meredith. So we have a surprise for the audience. I know whoever is listening to this on audio, please continue listening. And if you would like to now have the portion of this podcast in the video version available to you, I would also go ahead and check out the YouTube channel and see where you can pull that up, because I'm going to be roasted by Meredith live right now. She's going to pull up my LinkedIn profile and walk through it. I'm feeling a little nervous. This is going to be a vulnerable moment for me, but we will learn how best to optimize your LinkedIn profile using that as an example. So Meredith, take it away. You're welcome to start screen sharing, and we will go over the anatomy and really all the things that we can do to really get our message across.
Absolutely. And no judgment. This is all in the spirit of helping everyone to optimize their profile to the best that they can. So all good. So I always like to start at the top with the banner. A lot of people tend to have just sort of that green background, which is the default that LinkedIn provides. But I love that you have something specific to you, tailored. I always like to encourage my clients, again, going back to that thought of LinkedIn is your marketing and your brand. How do you want to show up? How do you want to be seen? So find any sort of an image, whether you're doing a search for a free image or you have something that you want to create, what represents you. It can be personal, it can be business, again, as long as you feel it's staying within that brand and the message that you want to get across. So I love in your case how you made it about your space and in your work, and that's great. So that's my first thought. Wonderful headshot, right? You want to make sure, as we talked about before, that it is current, updated, professional, good quality from sort of the chest up is great. When we come down to right below your name, right here, this is called your headline. So you are actually allowed 220 characters if you want. Not that you have to use that all, but
Wow.
it's a really good idea when you're thinking about your headline. You don't want it to just be about the titles. I mean, yes, it can be absolutely like the titles of the roles, either if you're in job search that you're targeting or where you are, but you never have to name the company, the hospital, the organization. You want to make it more about your key, your key expertise, special interests. Are you a cardiologist? Are you a healthcare innovator? Are you an advocate for preventative medicine? So you can kind of pick out certain skills, expertise, roles that you're targeting. Again, depending on what your focus is, I would like to encourage have a little bit more. Something else to think about if you happen to be in job search, you want to think about that whole search engine optimization aspect. And if recruiters or hiring managers are searching for certain positions or skills, these words in your headline will come up in their searches. So I always like to share that. Now, there is an option when, that you can share if you happen to be in job search that you're open to work, and you can just make it for recruiters if you don't want your entire LinkedIn community to know. Now, remember, I'm logged in as me, so I won't be able to see it, but down here in these buttons, there'll be a bubble that says add profile section. And when you click on it, it will allow you to show open to work, and you can either choose just recruiters, so that only recruiters that have what they call LinkedIn Recruiter can do active searches, or you can choose your entire community. And that is there's no right or wrong, by the way. I know a lot of people have asked, does it make me look desperate? Is it wrong? I've had a lot of conversations with colleagues of mine in this space, and you're going to get two schools of thought, but I think at the end of the day, truly, it is a personal decision and how much you want to share. So I'd like to share that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions to this point that you would like to stop me to ask, or you tell me?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Meredith. I've heard that some people will, for example, where I put my name on the top along with my professional initials and all, they'll tend to put in what they do, or like they'll put in, for example, cardiologist, preventive cardiologist, or coach, or something like that. So when you talk about the SEO optimization, that's really the blurb that's underneath it that counts more, the one on the top.
I think it's better. I absolutely think it's perfectly acceptable to have those letters up in your name, but I do think it's worth it to also include it down in your headline. That's where I think it's going to get pulled more. Okay. Any other questions?
Just going on.
All right. We talked about networking and how important that is, right? Clearly, the goal is to have good connections, but strategically connecting, right? Like you don't have to feel the need to connect with 1,000 people just to connect. think about the connections with other physicians, healthcare leaders, potential collaborators, mentors, who's going to add the most value and help you grow in this space. So when you're looking to connect with others, keep that in mind. And then instead of just hitting the button that says, let's connect, add a little note. I think that's a nice touch just to let them know why you're looking to connect. So just keeping that in line.
I just want to add
Okay.
over there, the notes that are just very vague, like if you're going to put a note, put in an actual note. Don't just go like, hi, or like, hey there, or whatever the AI prompts are these days. So I'll just share that I don't like being called Amna by everyone. So the AI prompt just says, hey there, Amna, or hi, Amna. I don't even know you. So I would rather prefer you call me hi, Dr. Shabir, or reach out to me like that. So I think just as somebody, if they're trying to contact physicians, even, if they're recruiters or somebody else, please, if it's a physician that you're trying to contact, call them Dr. So-and-so. Don't just use their first name like you're, buddies with them.
Yeah, great point. You want to make sure that you're being respectful and professional. I think it's a great point for sure. Absolutely. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so moving on, the about section. So this about section is really important. Again, when we think about your brand, your marketing, I also like to tell people, look, it's kind of a sales pitch almost, if you will. I mean, you have 2,600 characters, not that you have to use all of that. But again, this is where you want to think about what is the story that you're trying to share? What do you want people to know about you when they're reading this section? So well crafted, highlight your professional journey, your key achievements, accomplishments, goals. If you're in job search, you want to tailor it that way and let people know that. Or if you're making it more, if you're more in like that entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship type space, you can tailor it that specific way. You want to make sure you're writing it in first person. So great job there, because that makes you seem more approachable, more relatable. The other thing I also like to share is, and this is a personal decision. I know we talked about, sort of keeping that fine line, but in the spirit of wanting to let people get to know you a little bit, I sometimes will encourage my clients, if there is a little bit of a personal blurb you want to add, maybe in my free time, you can find me doing this, or I'm very much an advocate of that. That is completely optional, but acceptable in this case. I also like to encourage people, end with a call to action if you're comfortable with that. I'm open to new connections, either in this space, in this industry, or in general. It's just nice that, again, and you always have the option to decide if you want to connect with someone or not, but I think it's nice to have. The other thing I love that you have here are your top 5 skills. So LinkedIn, as you see here, does allow you to choose your top 5. You're limited to 5 in the about section. But again, this can go back to that search engine optimization we were talking about. And it's what you want, to think about standing out. So I think this is great.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little bit better now that you've shared that. And
Yes.
I love the call to action. I guess, Meredith, my question in this about section is, when we're trying to share who we are, so as human beings, there's so many parts of us, and even during professional growth, for example, somebody could, as a physician, but they're also a writer, but they're also doing all these other aspects of their life and actually career and opportunity wise. What's the really good way to highlight the different parts of who you are? So, for example, writing, speaking, your non-clinical practice, your clinical practice, how would you recommend that?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I love that. Again, you have 2,600 characters here. So if it's possible, I think I would encourage, have some version of blurbs sharing that, because I think that's really great to do. And then is when we get down farther, like in the featured section, where you can actually share, like if there is something that you did write about, or if you're starting a new venture and you've published something, that's where you can go ahead and add some of those. We talked about videos or articles or whatnot, but I would encourage you, if you have other pieces and you still have the real estate to do it, this is the right section to add that information to. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is where you want to be able to share. This is that story of you where, depending on your focus, and it's great to have different interests, that's where you should absolutely be highlighting that information. So That's great. And then I like how you have your services here. So again, if you are an entrepreneur or if you're in private practice or if there's some, services that you want to offer, again, when you're up at the top, there's the bubble here that'll say add profile sections. And that's where you'll be able to have all these options of adding these different sections, which is really important. So I'm glad that you have them. This is the place to highlight as much as you can so that you can be attracting the audience that you're targeting. And then, as I just mentioned, I love how you have this featured section. I mean, the featured section, again, it really allows you to showcase key accomplishments, publications, presentations, videos. It's particularly important for building your brand and really letting people see what you've done and the value you add. So, if you have certain certifications of things, you can also add them in addition to the other areas. So this is a great area. I highly encourage, especially physicians, to be using this to really help your information stand out and to show your audience where it is, what you're targeting.
It's the end of another busy day. You just saw 20, 30 patients, maybe more. Instead of heading home for dinner with your spouse or playing with your kids, you now begin your night job, charting. Charting is critical for patient care, billing, and medical legal liability, but it steals our focus from our patients, eats away at our time with our families, and keeps us up at night. The burden of always having another chart to complete drains all of us. Freed listens, prepares your notes, and writes patient instructions for you. Charting is done before your patient walks out of the room. Wait, because it gets better. Freed learns your style over time. It's AI, just like a human scribe would, except it will never quit on you. Freed is loved by 3,000 plus clinicians from every specialty. It's HIPAA compliant, takes 30 seconds to learn, and costs only $99 a month. You can try Freed for free right now by going to freed.ai, Freed.ai. Listeners of the Physician's Guide to Doctoring can use the code PGD50 for $50 off the first month.
I have a question about the featured section. So, you've shared, I sometimes can't tell, can I share as much on top as I want to? Is there like an optimal number of like you should only have 3 featured or 4 featured or 5 featured?
That's a great question. I mean, I would say, the things that you feel are most relevant and important, things are going to trickle through, right? I mean, maybe you've done some stuff 6 months ago, so it will still live there. But I think it's fine because you want to keep, it's almost like, it goes back to when we're talking about activity, right? And posting things, which I was going to get to next. So, I mean, I think you pick the most relevant, again, if it's a speaking engagement, if it's an article that you've published, something that you want to showcase, absolutely get it up there, because as you add more, it will get pushed down, but it'll always live there. And so this is the area for you to shine and really show what's most important that you want your audience to know about you and see.
All right.
And then moving down to activity, I know we touched on this. I mean, I love that even as recent as 4 hours ago, as I mentioned before, and as you were saying, LinkedIn is so about, that visibility, building your brand. And while you do not have to live on here, if you can build it into your practice 2 to 3 times a week, maybe 15 to 30 minutes, again, commenting on posts, sharing your own, whatever value that is going to build your visibility, build your brand, drive people to your profile. I also like to encourage, look, if you are interested in a certain healthcare organization, company, even if it's someone you don't know, follow those either companies, people, whatnot first so that their posts start coming into your feed. You can comment on their post before you reach out cold. The goal is that hopefully they're going to start recognizing your name. Maybe they respond. And then after 1 or 2 interactions like that, then you could reach out for a connect. And it's not so cold anymore because they've seen the value that you add. They see your perspective. They know that you're an actual person. So that's another way to build your network, build your brand, and make an outreach that could be cold a little warmer. So I like to encourage my clients to think about that as well when they're trying to either break into a new organization or company or find someone in one of those places, a hospital, a private practice, whatnot. Maybe it's for, an internship, an entrepreneurship, something to help again get you out there and to meet more people. So I think that's something really important to think about. Any questions or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so when you were talking about engagement, there's AI and bots everywhere, and sometimes I'm questioning, is this a person or is this AI?
Yeah.
Your thoughts on like how does I mean, I know that nobody really knows the algorithm. We're trying to do our most educated guessing here. How does that get impacted? How to have real connections? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you have to be careful. I mean, I know with like LinkedIn Premium and just with all the AI out there, you can have anything written for yourself. And look, if writing isn't your specialty, maybe use it to help you. But at the end of the day, it is easy enough to spot what isn't human. So really try to massage it. You want to make it sound human, right? Like you want to have genuine, legitimate outreach and interaction and conversation. So I would just caution you to be a little careful. I know that that is the newer feature that LinkedIn has, but I also have heard like there's obviously so many ever changing pieces of LinkedIn that, sometimes you can be penalized if it looks too AI
Mm.
focused. I mean, again, I know they offer that feature for all of the different sections, but just if it in terms of like responding or posting your own things, I would just caution you to be a little careful on that.
Yeah, and I'm also like wondering about the impact of that when we're commenting, like especially when we're trying to do engagement, right? If you are just engaging for the sake of engaging, which we're all human, we all have days in which we want to, and
Mhm.
we're going to have more, robust responses. All my LinkedIn friends know what I'm talking about. And then there are days where, it's okay to have that lesser of a response, but then just I feel like I see some comments that are purely volume based and not quality based. So some thoughts on that.
I agree. And that's not going to add the value that you want. I would more encourage you or rather you see, look, keep it simple and just great post, even if there's just a little bit of value. And look, if it's not in you that day, not that liking it is going to give you as much visibility, but even if you like something that still helps. But yeah, I agree. You don't want to just throw it in, ask chat or one of the million AI tools to write you a response because you can tell, right? Like you really want to make it true to you and your voice and your messaging. So if it's not in you that day, just keep it simple. Great point. Thanks so much for sharing it. I agree. And then on the next time you're responding, try to really dig in a little bit more to really show the thoughts or the value. And listen, you can even, like, if it's not in you that day, but you thought it was a great article, even resharing it to your LinkedIn pro community and maybe adding one or two quick sentences on why this resonated with you, that also helps and that still counts.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just encouraging everyone to do that would be a good place to be.
Okay, so moving down to experience. So here's my thoughts on experience. Each role that you have, normally when you're in your own, you'll have the pencil where you can edit and go in. So each position is allowed 2,000 characters.
Oh,
I do strongly feel that it is absolutely to your benefit to have a couple of either bullets or sentences. Make it more accomplishment based if you can versus task based because think about it this way. If someone is finding you on LinkedIn before they're seeing your resume, and you also have the luxury of more real estate on LinkedIn versus your resume, you want to give them a sense of what does this role as an ambassador entail and what does this entail? So I really would encourage you. Again, it doesn't have to be the full 2,000 characters. It doesn't have to be a novel, but I would encourage having a couple of bullets as much as it can be more accomplishment focused and highlighting what you've done. And what I was going to say also is, especially if you are in some version of a job search or looking to connect, think about which of those accomplishments are most in line and relevant to where you're targeting next. I am a big fan that I would absolutely encourage you to go in and add bullets under each of these areas so that people know what you've done. I do like, by the way, and also encourage that you have skills. Now, I know LinkedIn started doing that like with their AI. So I think it's a good idea to take stock and, go back in. You're not limited to the 5 like you are in the about section. That doesn't mean you need to have 30, but I would absolutely, because again, it can go back to that SEO search. I would absolutely encourage pick the skills that are most relevant, even if you feel like they're very similar, that's okay. It's just a good idea to pick the top skills that you think are most relevant, and it can be more than the 5 below the description box that's highlighting what you've done in each of your roles. And I was just looking how far you went back, which is great. The one thing I would also like to say, and I think maybe for this audience, depending, it may not be as much of a factor, but in general, the rule of thumb, similar to the resume, is, you don't need to go back more than 10 years necessarily. Now, if you have, fellowships and whatnot, that can all go down a little bit below. But, you want those two to mirror. And I know we're not doing a resume session here, but, think about what are those roles or positions or, whatnot that are most beneficial for you to add in that experience section. And then education, that is great. Obviously, you want to show all of the different education that you have. One thing I will say, as we all progress and it becomes a little farther and farther away from graduation, and I don't think you're there yet, you can eventually start leaving off graduation dates. I don't think that's a problem for you at this point. I'm just saying for future, that is something that you can think about. Maybe people that graduated in the early 2000s or before. Unfortunately, ageism is a thing. And so, although physicians, maybe not as much as in the corporate world, but food for thought, that is something you can do. Again, maybe in the medical world, it's a little bit different, but I just like to share that if that's a question that comes up.
Are we able to log those without adding the dates?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
again, I know I'm logged in as me, but if you click on the pencil, it will absolutely allow you to keep everything but remove your dates, and it will not penalize you. Love the license and certifications. Absolutely recommend include all of that for sure. And then when it comes to skills, so that's great that you have 21. You are actually now allowed 100. You do not need 100, but I do like to encourage my clients, take stock. It's a good idea. Go back in. Are there other skills you can add? Are there some that maybe aren't relevant anymore? So just every now and then go in and do some inventory. This goes back to making sure we're keeping it updated and current. The other thing I like to share, so you can see that on your main LinkedIn page, your top skills are physician coach and leadership development coaching. If you felt like there were 2 other skills out of your 21 that you feel are more relevant, when you are in, and again, remember I'm logged in as me, but when you click on, there'll be a pencil here, and then 3 dots will show up just to the left. When you click on the 3 dots, there's a drop-down menu that appears, and the word reorder will show up. So when you click on that reorder button, all of your skills pop up in a box. And then on the right side, there's 3 little lines, and your mouse will become a hand. And then you can just drag and drop to reorder your skills.
That's a very neat way to kind of really snapshot what you want somebody to see. And then whoever wants to dig deeper, they can dig deeper.
Yes. So I always like to share that because I think that's a really neat feature to add in case. And then recommendations. I love that you have one from a couple of months ago. Recommendations and endorsements. I mean, think of these as free references, former mentor, colleagues, depending on where you are, maybe professors. If appropriate, if you're in private practice, maybe a patient. Again, obviously, only if that's appropriate. Ideally, and this is ideally, and listen, everyone's in their own place, 3 to 5 recommendations is amazing. 1 to 2 is a great place to start. And again, the goal is really just in the spirit of, letting people see the value that you've brought to them. And maybe you're doing research, maybe you're in consulting, private practice, again, whatever that case may be. If you're, doing something entrepreneurial and innovation or technology within healthcare, think about all those different areas, and anywhere that you think you could get a recommendation, it's really nice. And it's super easy. Again, I always encourage people, ask first, however you do. And then when you're up here in that add profile section and you go down to where it says add recommendations, or it walks you through really easy. You would just type in the person's name in the box. They obviously have to be on LinkedIn. And then it'll ask you like where you worked with them, what the relationship was, and then a little box that you can type them a note. And then they will get an alert in this messaging box right down in the lower right-hand corner with your request. And then when they complete it and send it back to you, you will then get a notification down here where you can review it. If you're happy with it, there's a button that says add to my profile, or you can follow up with them to make any little tweaks or changes. So I think that's just something nice to continue to have. And organizations are great. The only other last thing I would say, like I mentioned before, is think about if there's any groups. Again, there are so many based on specialty and industry, and it's just another great way to build your network and from an educational networking, all of that perspective. So other than that, I love your profile. It's great.
Thank you, Meredith. This was helpful. And I hope whoever is listening to this also found it helpful. If you were listening along, please go ahead and pull up the video version of this later on YouTube and watch it. And I want to now invite you to share any take-home points, Meredith, and really how can folks also connect with you?
You're always welcome to reach out and connect on LinkedIn, and I'll share my other contact information as well. Always happy to be a resource. And, again, just to reiterate, I think it's great to have the profile, but you need to keep it updated. You need to keep it current. Engage a couple of times a week. It doesn't have to be super long amounts of time, but to really build that brand and that visibility, you have so much to offer to your space, to be that thought leader, to learn and develop and grow yourself professionally. It really can be, it is a great tool and a great resource, and millions of people use it globally. So I just encourage you to get out there, and any questions, there are lots of great resources I'm always happy to answer, and there's great tutorials.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking today.
Doctors dedicate our lives to caring for others. It's time someone took care of us. Visit patternlife.com to simplify your path to peace of mind. patternlife.com, simplifying your insurance journey. Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means you either fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please share it, or like it, or comment on a social media post, or write us a 5-star review. Something. It would really help me out. And maybe what you learned from this episode can help someone else too. The views expressed in this episode are those of the interviewer and interviewee, and don't represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting make it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or really any advice. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.